Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the final film in Marvel's Phase 4, and this will be a spoiler-free review, so don't worry about any big spoilers getting revealed. Right off the bat, I'm going to say it's the best Marvel film of the year, easily. I mean, the competition wasn't strong, but it's easily the best Marvel film of the year. I'd say it's the best acted Marvel film in a long time, and my personal favourite Marvel film since Endgame. I know that a lot of people would put No Way Home in that title spot and probably still will, but you know, for me, No Way Home is a very overrated movie, and Wakanda Forever just felt a lot more consistent. That's not to say this is a perfect film. I think if I was going to rate it out of 10, I'd probably give it somewhere between a 7 and an 8, depending on how generous I was feeling. But the thing that stood out for me in this film, probably more than it has in any Marvel film ever, was the performances. Particularly Letitia Wright, who had one hell of a responsibility stepping into Chadwick Boseman's shoes, especially considering, you know, in the first film and in her appearances in the Avengers films, she was very much sidelined as a comedic relief character, not very complex or multi-dimensional. And here she is centre stage, and she rose to the challenge really well. I thought the character arc that she goes on throughout this film was brilliantly written, and it goes to some places that I didn't expect it to, particularly in the third act, that I just thought were really rewarding for the character. Angela Bassett's performance in this film gave me physical chills at one point. She was so kind of in character, so emotionally raw and evocative. Same with Danai Gurira as Okoye. She is an incredibly expressive actor, and her on-screen presence is always felt. In fact, and this is probably going to be quite a bold statement to make, but at no point in this film did I feel like we are missing a presence here. I think all of the actors capably rose to the challenge of being a bit more front and center in the wake of T'Challa's absence. Now, quite a few of these characters kind of drift in and out at different points in the story and occasionally feel underused. Winston Duke as M'Baku, I don't know why I was expecting him to be in this film a little more than he is. And he was the one character who I felt wasn't kind of in the film as much as he should have been. And maybe Lupita Nyong'o too, but when she eventually is introduced into the film, she kind of sticks around. The MCU has a real tendency to kind of directly address when it's trying to be political, when it's trying to be progressive, and Wakanda Forever just gets on with it. The main characters of the story are women because that's who the story revolves around, that's whose characters have the most interesting arcs, and that's who we're going to follow. It didn't feel ham-fisted like the kind of massive group shot in the Endgame battle. It didn't feel derogative like She-Hulk did a lot of the time. It just felt very organic, very natural, and it benefited the film massively. I think the one character who at times outstays their welcome is Riri Williams, you know, Ironheart. I think her relevance to the plot is valid and her presence in the film is valid, but then I think the way that she's then kept in the film for the rest of the runtime, whereas a lot of characters that we are familiar with get underused, kind of makes you wish that balance had been a little more in favour of characters we're more invested in. And a lot's been made of Namor's debut into the film. I think he's good. I think the performance, again, is fantastic. I love his kind of physical showcasing of his abilities. I think his motivations at times feel a little bit similar to Eric Killmonger from the previous film. There's this sense of impending oppression and internal rage and the need to exact vengeance that feels a little bit like we're retreading old ground. But he feels like a fully formed character, which is something that can't be said for many of the MCU's antagonists. The film obviously pays tribute to Chadwick Boseman, the actor, and King T'Challa, the character, and that's mainly in a kind of prologue and epilogue to the film, both of which felt slightly short. Both scenes heavily feature around Letitia Wright as Shuri, obviously because she's our main protagonist, but there's just a kind of emotional investment in those particular scenes that we sort of suddenly cut away from before the scenes have had room to breathe and grow. I just think that the emotional resonance of those scenes would have benefited from a bit more screen time and us lingering with the characters in those moments for a little longer. But that's a very small nitpick. Soundtrack is once again on fire. I think this film, whether that's instrumentally or the song choices, are just fantastic. There's a real kind of beat and a real pace and energy to a lot of the scenes. I do think the film is too long. I think it introduces so many interesting ideas about Wakanda's position in the kind of global geopolitical sphere, about the kind of idea of colonialism still existing in modern day politics, that the film never quite tackles with any depth. I assume that's going to come to fruition in later projects. But it's something that's been teased in Civil War, in Black Panther 1, and in this film that still feels like it's being undernourished. And Martin Freeman as Everett Ross being the kind of bridge between Wakanda and the rest of the world, it does feel like a bit of an unnecessary subplot in this film, and it does add a sort of clunkiness to the narrative at times. But yes, thankfully Phase 4 of the MCU goes out with a bang. I really did enjoy Wakanda Forever so much more than all the TV shows we've had this year and all the films we've had this year. I think while the visual spectacle may not be on the level of Shang-Chi or Spider-Man No Way Home, the dramatic and emotional crux of the film is held together so much stronger. And this film feels very carried by the characters in a way that most MCU films don't. You know, most of the Marvel films feel like the characters slot into the plot to benefit this ongoing tapestry and kind of positioning them as chess pieces on a board, whereas this film does feel like the characters have room to grow in more natural ways. Not a perfect film, obviously, like a lot of those wider universe tie-ins and kind of big picture stuff doesn't benefit the intimacy of the narrative it needs to tell, but the overall experience is still a very positive one. So when you guys check it out, do let me know what you guys think. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, that's always a huge help for me, and in the meantime, we'll see you for the next vid.